if I'm audible. And a small request to each one of you, please switch on your webcams. All of you, please keep your cameras on so that I can see you. Yeah. Others, please keep your cameras on. Yeah. Others, thanks Siddhi, thanks Om. Others, please keep your cameras on. Yeah, am I audible, all of you? How many of you have given the test? Please let me know. Raise your hands. Okay. Others, let me know how many of you have given the test. Okay. Kriti, others. Yeah, Manpreet, Sachin, okay. Shrishti, Vaishali, okay. Rama, fine. Ketan, Sachin, fine, fine. So, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the discussion of the pre-Pareekshan test 1. So, before we start with the test discussion, let me discuss as to what all things we'll be covering in this particular session of ours. First and foremost, this is the structure of the entire class. As you can see, firstly, we'll start with the overall strategy and approach for the upcoming prelims examination, where we'll briefly touch upon how should you approach and what should be your strategy for the upcoming prelims examination. After that, we'll understand the key takeaways from the pre-Pareekshan test. Now, most of you have given the pre-Pareekshan test. So sometimes, apart from giving test, you should also learn from the test itself. That is, what should you learn from this particular pre-Pareekshan test, so that whatever mistakes which you have committed in this pre-Pareekshan test, the same mistakes you should not be committing in the actual prelims examination. So what are the key takeaways? That is what we will discuss. Thirdly, we will discuss what should be a strategy and approach for the Indian economy. And fourth, I shall take up some of the tricky questions from the Indian economy section which were asked in this time pre-Pareekshan test. This is what I will be covering. After me, Vaibhav sir as well as Gaurav sir, they will come and discuss their respective sections. And as far as today's DNS is concerned, let me tell you, today's DNS will start once we are done with this particular discussion of ours. I hope it is clear, right? So what we'll do is we'll start with the first thing, that is what should be the strategy and approach for the prelims examination. See here, I'm pretty sure most of you are studying extremely hard for the upcoming prelims examination. You must have covered at least one time revision of all the subjects. You must be now focusing on current affairs. In spite of this, you might be getting less marks in the mock test. You might not be feeling confident about your preparation. So for those of you who are not feeling confident, those of you are not getting good marks in the mock test, what should be your strategy and approach? So here then, I shall be discussing what is called as 5-step approach to UPSC prelims. It's like a step-by-step approach for the upcoming prelims examination, which I'm going to cover in the first 5 to 10 minutes. And after that, we'll start with the other aspect. The first step or the first strategy is that you should have a clear-cut idea of what is the relative weightage of different subjects in the UPSC prelims in the last 5 years. Within each of the subject, what is the relative weightage of different themes, and more importantly, you should have a clear-cut idea about all the previous year questions. Take for example, you should have a clear-cut idea that polity on an average has a weightage of 15 to 20 questions. Within polity, you should have an idea as to which all chapters are more important as compared to the other chapters. For example, the chapter of Parliament, the chapter of Fundamental Rights might be more important as compared to other chapters. And within the chapter of Parliament and within the chapter of Fundamental Rights, what were the previous year questions which UPSC has asked? When you have this clear-cut idea, you will fine-tune your preparation in line with the UPSC prelims examination. Take for instance, if you are reading the chapter of Parliament, you'll have a clear-cut idea that normally UPSC has asked questions with respect to parliamentary committees. Based upon that, when you are studying the chapter of Parliament, you'll focus more upon parliamentary committees. And based upon the analysis of the previous year questions, you'll know what kind of questions have been asked on parliamentary committees. And that is how you'll keep learning from the previous year questions. I can say the same thing as far as economy is concerned. So the overall weightage of Indian economy in the last 5 years is around 15 to 20 questions. And within Indian economy, the chapter of monetary policy has higher weightage. And if you analyze the previous year questions, you'll get to know from the chapter of monetary policy, it is mostly questions are asked with respect to current affairs. Now, if I could give an example of current affairs related to economy, I'm pretty sure some of you may have heard about standing deposit facility, SDF, or you may have heard about incremental cash reserve ratio. Don't you think SDF and incremental cash reserve ratio are important developments which have taken place in monetary policy? And that is why, if you have observed our pre-pareekshan test, in that pre-pareekshan test we had asked questions about SDF as well as incremental cash reserve ratio. So based upon what kind of questions UPSC generally targets, we are including those questions in the pre-pareekshan test. So that is the first stage, analysis. Based upon that, obviously, just analysis would not suffice. The next step is studying. So for studying, what you should focus is, you should focus first on your core subjects. Now, within the UPSC aspirant community, there is a lot of FOMO, fear of missing out, as far as current affairs is concerned. I have seen most of the students running behind current affairs without realizing an important aspect, that current affairs has a weightage of just around 10 to 15% in the actual prelims examination. The real game, let me tell you, lies in the core subjects and not in current affairs. So you should first focus upon the static subjects, core subjects, and once we are done with the static subjects, core subjects, once you have revised the core subjects, then you can move to the current affairs. Let me just give an example. For polity, you should first complete Lakshmikant. Once you are done with the Lakshmikant, then you can start focusing on current affairs related to polity. Same way, when it comes to economy, can I say, you will not understand what is incremental cash reserve ratio without understanding cash reserve ratio. You will not understand standing deposit facility without understanding the reverse repo. So you should first focus on static part, because static part will help you build concepts. Based upon that, you can then focus on the current affairs. So that is the second step. Focus first on core subjects, keep your sources limited, revise multiple times, integrate current affairs into your preparation once you are done with the static part, and then you should keep solving the previous year questions. Now generally what happens is, if you keep on studying, but if you don't get that positive feedback that you're approaching towards your goal, you might not feel confident. So when you read a subject, immediately after reading a chapter or a subject, go back, solve the PYQs, you'll get a positive reinforcement, a positive feedback that yes, you're able to solve the previous year questions. Based upon that, you'll get a much greater thrust in your preparation. So that is the second step. Third step is the application. How do you know whatever you have studied, will you be able to solve the questions or not in the actual prelims? For that, you have to attempt the mock test. So when you attempt the mock test, you will be able to test your knowledge. You will be able to test whether you have understood the concepts or not. I hope you're getting this point. So that testing part is the application where you solve the mock test. And I get a lot of queries from the students asking, how many mock tests should I give? Should I give 100 tests? Should I give 150 tests, 200 tests? Let me tell you, the quantity of tests that you give does not matter. What matters is the quality of test. What's the meaning of quality of test? Basically, if you are giving 2 hours time for giving a particular test, after that 2 hours, you should spend at least half an hour on the analysis of the test. Which means the next stage here is evaluation. Give the test and then evaluate your performance. When I'm saying evaluate your performance means how? I would say prepare a kind of Excel sheet. In this Excel sheet, keep a track of your performance. How will you keep a track? For example, you should capture some important data. For example, how many questions you have attempted. Out of those questions that you have attempted, how many questions were correct? How many questions were incorrect? And what is your accuracy in the test? This you should keep a record of all the tests that you're giving until the prelims examination. Now, why is it important is you're using data. You're using data in order to track your performance. You're using data to improve your performance. How? Let's say I have given the test on geography, right? Now, in the test of geography, I'm capturing information such as how many questions I've attempted, how many questions are correct, how many questions are incorrect, and accuracy. Where I'll get to know, for example, that my accuracy in geography is low. This is a source of information for me to know that geography is my weak subject, right? Now within geography, if I go into little depth, probably I'm committing more mistakes in certain map based questions, which clearly goes on to show that I have to revise or focus more upon map based questions, which is important. Same way, if I'm attempting economic question, and within economic question, let's say I am repeatedly committing mistakes in the chapter of BOP, balance of payment. It clearly shows that I'm strong in monetary policy and I'm probably weak in balance of payment. So I have to focus more upon the balance of payment. So that is how you'll keep a track of your performance and then keep on improving yourself. I hope you're getting this point. So it's like by the time you're done, you'll be approaching the prelims examination, you'll have your own data. And use this particular data to improve your performance in the actual prelims examination. So the last part is identify your weak areas and then keep on improving based upon this data based approach. समझ आ रहा है सबको, right? So this should be our approach as far as the prelims examination is concerned. So right now, at the start of your journey, or probably when you're giving so many mock tests, when you might not be getting good amount of marks, now because of that, your confidence might be low. You must understand why is your confidence low. Your confidence is low because you're getting less marks. And the reason why you're getting less marks is probably you do not have conceptual clarity. So what you should do, if you apply 1 2, 3, 4, 5 stage, automatically, can you see, your conceptual clarity will improve. And as your conceptual clarity improves, your accuracy rate will improve. And because of its increase in accuracy rate, you'll be able to get more marks in the prelims examination. And that is our target. So this is a step-by-step approach for the prelims examination, right? So keeping this as a background, what we'll do is we'll understand the key takeaways from the pre-Pareekshan test that you have given. All of you are given the pre-Pareekshan test, and like I say, just giving test is not important. After giving test, you have to evaluate your performance, identify your strengths and weak areas so that you are able to capitalize on your strength and eliminate your weak areas, right? So let's understand as to what should you learn from this particular attempt of your pre-Pareekshan test. सबसे पहले just have a breakup of the subject wise questions which were asked in the pre-Pareekshan test. From Indian economy, 17 questions, polity 17 questions, geography 10 questions, environment 17, history 19, science and tech 10, international relations 10. This is how we had framed the pre-Pareekshan test. And can you closely observe, we have taken care to ensure that we are able to replicate the UPSC standard, particularly in terms of weightage of questions of different subjects. Like think, economic का weightage कितना है prelims में? 15 to 20. Can you see? We had asked 17 questions from economy. Same polity, if you see the average weightage of polity for last 5 years, 15 to 20. And accordingly 17 questions from polity. So we have taken care to ensure that we are trying to emulate the UPSC standard in terms of weightage. Now you might be thinking, yes, about weightage it is correct. What about the difficulty level? Now with respect to difficulty level, you can just see here. See, what I do believe is based upon your level of preparation. If you are well prepared for the prelims examination, I would say on an average, for an average student who is well prepared, almost around 60 questions, almost around 60-65 questions will be easy to moderate, 60 to 65. The remaining, I would say 30 to 35 questions are difficult. You may not have heard, or probably those questions are difficult. And the same thing we have tried to incorporate that in the pre-Pareekshan test. So you can see we have in the pre-Pareekshan test out of 100 questions, 12 easy questions and 47 moderate questions. 47 plus 12, if you see, almost 59 questions were on an average range from easy to moderate. Just think, if someone had attempted all of these 60 questions correctly, 60 questions correctly into 2 marks, how many marks you would have got? You would have got 120 marks, which is much above the cutoff. You could have just ignored the difficult part, focus on easy and moderate, then you could have easily cleared the cutoff marks. But then we know that this is an idealistic scenario, right? Because I might have attempted 60 questions and not all those 60 questions are correct. From these 60 questions, some questions will also be incorrect, right? So, how many questions should I have ideally attempted? I will tell you, ideally, in the pre-Pareekshan test, you should have attempted somewhere around 75 questions. What are those 75 questions? Like I said, 60 questions which are easy to moderate, and as far as the difficult questions are concerned, you could have taken a calculated guess in those difficult questions. You could have attempted, let's say, around 15 to 20 difficult questions. On an average, you should have attempted 75 questions. In this 75 questions that you have attempted, obviously 100% accuracy hona to mushkil hai, right? Let's say best case scenario, your accuracy is 75%. When I'm saying 75% accuracy means that out of 75 questions you have attempted, 75% of questions are correct, which would mean that you would correctly attempt 50 questions. And let's say 25 questions are incorrect. So you can just calculate the marks in this particular case. If 50 questions are correct, so you can see 150 here, 50 into 200, right? And there, if you get the negative marking, you will be still above the cutoff. 50 into 200, 25 into 2 divided by 3, that is 17. So 100 minus 17, if you see, 83. And as far as we are concerned, the pre-Pareekshan test cutoff, we think it should be somewhere around 80. If someone has scored more than 80 in the pre-Pareekshan test, you would have been well above the cutoff this time. So this is what you should have learned. But let me tell you where you would have committed mistake. Key takeaways. Let's look at the performance of the students. We had almost 9,000 students appearing for the pre-Pareekshan test number 1. And we have carefully analyzed the data of all of these students. Based upon the analysis of the data, we have seen as to how many students have actually scored above the cutoff, which we think is around 80. Can you see, out of 9,000 students, just 186 students have scored above 80 marks. Now someone might be, I would say, within top 10% of the students. Your rank may be somewhere around, I would say, 1000 rank. You might be feeling good about yourself that you got 1000 rank among 9,000 students. But what's the use if you are below the cutoff? You might be getting 150th rank. But what if think 186 means you must be getting 200 rank. But if your cutoff is less than 80, what's the use of that? I hope you're getting the point here, which I'm trying to convey. The question is, why only few students were able to score above the cutoff of 80? Let's try to analyze this. The reason why we are doing this particular analysis is to help you understand you should not commit the same mistakes in the actual prelims examination, right? So let me just show you as to where the students have gone wrong. Can you see here? If you see, we have categorized the students into 3 different categories. Category number 1 are exceptional students who have been scoring more than 80 marks in the pre-Pareekshan test. Category number 2 is the students who score between 60 to 80. Category 3 is less than 60 marks. Concentrate on the first category of students who have scored more than the cutoff of 80. They have high number of attempts and at the same time they have high accuracy. So they have attempted more also. Not just the attempt, their accuracy is also very high. That is why they have scored exceptionally high. Obviously, as far as these students are concerned, if you are in this particular category of the first category, I would say do not have to worry about it. Whatever you have been doing so far, it's exceptional. Just stick to that. Keep revising whatever you have studied. I think you should be through as far as we are concerned. But if you are belonging to this category, I would say it is a cause of concern. What concern? I'll tell you. If you are belonging to this category, the problem with you is you have been attempting more number of questions, but your accuracy is very low. To help you understand as to how high attempt can actually go against you, we have taken some specific examples. So without disclosing the names of the students, I'll just show you as to how a particular student, by attempting less number of questions, they could have easily scored more than the cutoff. Let me just show you that. Please concentrate on this particular Excel sheet, right? and concentrate on this particular student who has scored just above the cutoff of 80. Like I said, we expect cutoff to be 80, just above the cutoff, and concentrate on the number of questions this student has attempted, 72. When I started my discussion, I told you ideally number of attempts kitna hona chahiye tha? 75. Did we discuss that? And you can see here the accuracy of this particular student is 67%. And that is why with 72 questions attempt, this student has scored just above the cutoff, which is good. But just concentrate on the student just below this student. This student has attempted 93 questions. With 93 questions, this student has scored 80, just below the cutoff. And can you see by what margin the student has missed the cutoff? Understand, if this could happen in pre-pareekshan, don't you think the same thing could happen in actual prelims examination? And this is something which will not let you sleep for 1 year. Understand that. Samay aa raha hai? You'll keep on saying to everyone that I missed the cutoff by just 0. How much is that? 0.4. I hope you're getting this point, right? So, yahan pe, why is this student scoring less just below the cutoff? The reason here is, look at the accuracy. Accuracy is 57%. So, you just have to understand, if you want to clear the prelims examination, you should have high level of accuracy, which should be more than 65%. That is very, very important. I'll tell you another important case. Now, this is another important thing that we came across while analyzing the data of the students. This is something very surprising for us as well. Concentrate on all of these 5 students. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. क्या है वहां पे? 100 questions. Who attempts 100 questions? Now they must have thought कि pre-pareekshan है, चलो दे देते हैं 100 questions. You must understand, if you have a tendency to attempt 100 questions in the mock test, you'll carry forward the same tendency in the actual prelims examination also. So when you are giving mock tests, give mock tests in the same manner as you would give the actual prelims examination. Understand that. And why is this a concern? Can you see accuracy of these students? 54%. And forget about the accuracy, concentrate here. 77 marks. What is the cutoff marks? 80 marks. Now just imagine if all of these 5 students, if they had attempted less number of marks questions, had they attempted less, then obviously what could have happened is the number of incorrect questions would have got reduced. Their accuracy would have increased to 66%, and because of that they would have easily scored above the cutoff marks. I hope you are able to understand the important point which I am trying to convey. So based upon the analysis of this particular data, I am just trying to show you that in actual prelims examination, if you want to clear the prelims examination, number 1, you should focus on easy to moderate for sure. So like I said, easy to moderate, let me show you the breakup once again. Easy to moderate is 12 plus 47, which is somewhere around 60. If that is easy to moderate in pre-pareekshan, we are very sure the same thing will be there in the actual prelims also. 60 questions for sure you have to attempt it. And as far as the difficult questions are concerned, do not blindly attempt all the difficult questions. You can take calculated guesses in these difficult questions and attempt somewhere around 75. That's it. With an accuracy of 65 to 75, you could very well clear the prelims examination. I hope you are clear with this, everyone. And some of you must be having this fear. Sir, format change ho gaya hai. Earlier we used to have this elimination method, and now elimination method itself has got eliminated. You must be thinking about it. Let me tell you, go back to the previous year question once again, prelims 2023. In each of the subjects, I can guarantee that at least more than half of the questions were easy questions, easy to moderate. If in economy, if we had 18 questions, around more than 9 questions, more than half of the questions were actually easy. We tend to focus on the difficulty part without realizing that there are some questions which are easy. Understand that? Like in economy, people keep asking me, how do you prepare for questions like beta strategy, which was asked in Prelims 2023, without realizing that there was a easy question also in economy. I hope this part is clear, everyone. So this is what you must understand. See, whatever I have made you understand, right, for each one of you, you should try to do the same thing for yourself as well. And how do you do that? Track your performance. Keep tracking your performance, keep tracking your accuracy, try to identify your weakness, keep working upon your weakness, and that is how you will be able to clear the prelims examination. Clear with this? Okay. So this is what I would say. If you are a student who has scored above 80 marks, you are perfectly on track. There's nothing much you have to worry about. Just keep revising and be sure that you don't become overconfident. Please understand that. That is very important. अगर यहाँ पे you have scored exceptionally high, you should not become overconfident. You should keep revising, attempt mock tests, keep working on your performance. And for those of you who have been scoring between 60 to 80, I have clearly highlighted, focus more upon revision, keep a track of your performance, and keep learning from your performance. And for those of the students who have scored below 60, I would say start focusing on the basic concepts. Do not run behind current affairs at this particular stage. Focus first on the basic concepts, static subjects. Once you are done with at least once or twice revision of basic subjects, then you can jump to current affairs. I hope this is clear, everyone. So what I'll do is, I'll start with the discussion of economy, the strategy and approach for the Indian economy. And like I said, before you start any subject, you should know the relative weightage of a subject and the relative weightage of different themes in a particular subject. And accordingly, you can see here the overall weightage of Indian economy in the previous 5-year prelims ranges from 15 to 20 questions. So you can see it is almost 15 to 20, and that is why in the pre-Pareekshan test also we have included around 15 questions. And within the Indian economy, you can look at the relative weightage of different themes. Within the Indian economy, the theme which gets the maximum weightage is a theme of banking and finance. The same thing we have tried to incorporate in the pre-Pareekshan test as well. So what we'll do now, we will take up the discussion of some of the tricky questions from the economy section. I'm not going to discuss all the questions, only some questions from the Indian economy which are considered to be tricky. As far as other questions are concerned, we will share with you the detailed explanation. You can go through that particular explanation, you'll have more idea about it, right? So let's start with the discussion of some of the tricky questions. Question number 1, concentrate here. Look at the accuracy of the students. Accuracy of the students is around 43%. And like I said, if you have to score the prelim, if you have to clear the prelims examination, the accuracy should be at least around more than 60%. So since the accuracy of the students is quite less, that is why I am taking up the discussion of this question. Concentrate on the first statement. Increase in inflation leads to decrease in imports and increase in exports. Let's understand this. We are saying that there is a inflation, and we know inflation means prices of goods have increased. And why will prices of goods increase? Because the demand has increased or supply of goods has reduced. Because of these two things, the prices could increase. Now, can I say if demand has increased or supply has reduced, obviously we will import more, right? Because the demand is more, or for that matter, supply is less. Either way, prices is more, means we'll import more. On the other hand, as far as exports is concerned, in India itself demand is more, or in India itself the supply is less, so we will export less. I hope it is clear, everyone. So just read the statement. Increase in inflation leads to decrease in imports and increase in exports, which is clearly not the case, and hence the first statement which is given here is incorrect. See the second statement. Deflation benefits the creditors and adversely affects the debtors. Let's briefly touch upon this topic also. Now let's say there's a person A. This person A lends money, which is rupees 100, to person B, and this person B returns back rupees 100. This person A is lending money in the year 2020, person B is returning back the money in 2021, next year. Deliberately to make the explanation simplified, I have ignored the concept of interest. Please understand that. So if person A is lending money, can I say the person A becomes what? Creditor, and person B becomes the debtor. Now think here, if there is inflation of 10%, inflation of 10% as compared to in the year 2021 as compared to 2020, right? Now this person B is returning back the same 100 rupees. Think of it, if there is a inflation, what happens to purchasing power of currency? Purchasing power of the currency during inflation will reduce. Kaise? For example, in the year 2020, cost of one apple probably was equal to rupees 10. In the year 2021, cost of one apple is equal to rupees 11, right? So this person A with 100 rupees, he could have bought 10 apples. Now this person A is getting 100 rupees. With the same 100 rupees, how many apples he can buy? 9 apples, right? So in case of inflation, we can very well write that creditor gets affected because he is getting less in terms of purchasing power. समझ आया सबको? On the other hand, if there is deflation of 10%, it means in the year 2020, cost of apple is equal to rupees 10. In the year 2021, the cost of apple is now reduced to rupees 9. I am this person A. I have lent 100 rupees to person B. In 2020, with that 100 rupees, I could have bought 10 apples, right? But in 2021, the person B has returned 100 rupees. With that 100 rupees, if I go to market, can I buy 11 apples now? So during deflation, who will get benefited? Creditor will get benefited, right? And this is what we had asked in the examination. And if you're thinking from where this was asked, if you clearly observe a PYQ, previous year question, a previous year question was along the same lines as to what happens to creditors and debtors during inflation. From where we picked up this question and then formulated this as a sentence. So if you go back to the question, clearly deflation benefits the creditors and adversely affects the debtors, which is correct. Look at this. Negative real rate of interest. Okay, now as far as this question is concerned, there were a lot of students who are knowing about statement 1 and statement 2. There were some students who are not knowing about statement 3, that is, they are not knowing about what is the meaning of real rate of interest, and that is where the students went wrong. So what we are going to do now is we are going to discuss the concept of real rate of interest. Just focus here. Real rate of interest hota kya hai? We have two concepts: nominal rate of interest, which is the rate of interest on deposits or the loans. If I as a depositor go and deposit money in a bank, the bank is offering me 4% rate of interest on deposit, that becomes a nominal rate of interest. If you are a borrower, you are taking loan from a bank at 6%, for you that 6% becomes the nominal rate of interest. So nominal rate of interest is simply the market rate of interest. So what is real rate of interest then? Real rate of interest is the nominal rate of interest adjusted for inflation, that is nominal rate of interest minus inflation. So when you are adjusting the rate of interest for inflation, it becomes real rate of interest. For example, let's say I go and deposit 100 rupees in the year 2022 for 1 year. It's like a FD with a bank for 1 year, for which bank is offering me a rate of interest of 4%. तो मेरे लिए nominal rate of interest कितना हो गया? 4%. How will I calculate real rate of interest? Nominal rate of interest minus inflation. So can concentrate here. Let's say I get back 104 rupees in 2023 for my deposits. So let's look at the different scenarios of real rate of interest. Concentrate on the first one, scenario 1, where rate of inflation in 2023 is 2%. It means if I want to calculate the real rate of interest, I told you nominal rate of interest minus inflation. So nominal rate of interest is 4% and the inflation is 2%. 4 minus 2 is 2%. What is the interpretation of this? If rate of inflation is 2%, what does it mean? Cost of apple was rupees 100 in 2022. The cost of same apple in 2023 is 102. Right? So think here, if I as a person, if I had 100 rupees with me, with that 100 rupees I could have bought one apple. So person could have bought apple with rupees 100 in 2022. I am getting back, the person is getting back 104 in the next year 2023, and he goes and buys apple at 102. So how much is this person left with? 2 rupees. Hai na? So for him, what is the real profit? 2 rupees. How much money I have actually got from the bank? 4 rupees. But what is my real profit? 2 rupees. Why? Because the cost of apple which I normally buy has also increased by 2 rupees. So my real profit is just 2%. Think of it. Second scenario. If the rate of inflation is 4%, क्या होगा in that case? Apple which was costing 100 last year will now cost 104. If I had deposited 100 rupees in the bank last year, now I'll get 104. With that 104 which I've got, I'll go and purchase the apple from the market. Will I be left with any money? Not at all. So what is my real profit in this case? 0. I hope you're getting this point. This is 0 profit. Can I say, as long as depositors are getting profit on their deposits, depositors will go and deposit money with the bank. If depositors are not getting profit, agar unka profit negative mein chala gaya, what will happen in that case? Will depositors deposit money? Not at all. Best example is this scenario. Rate of inflation is 6%. I deposit 100 rupees for 1 year. I get 104. I'm happy because I've got 104. Now I go to market to buy apple. Now what is happening is apple which is costing me 100 is now costing 106. Can I afford an apple now? No. I'll not afford an apple now because apple has become much more costly. So what is my real profit? Negative, -2. Did you get the point here? Think very carefully. If we want to encourage depositors to deposit money in a bank during inflation, can I say the real rate of interest should always be positive? Hai na? Real rate of interest should be positive. How do you make real rate of interest positive? Real rate of interest is equal to nominal rate of interest minus inflation, which means any given time, can I say this nominal rate of interest should be higher than inflation or not? अगर ये inflation 6% है, bank should offer a interest of how much? 7%. If bank is offering a interest of only 4%, depositors will not deposit money. So that is what we had asked here. So based upon that, if you go back to the question, negative real rate of interest encourages the depositors to deposit more with the banks during inflation? No, right? So the first statement is incorrect. The second statement is correct. Third statement is incorrect. The right answer is only 1. Based upon that, we have other question. Look at this question. Which among the following best describes the concept of fiscal drag on the economy? Look at the accuracy of the students. Accuracy is just 40%. Now, why is accuracy so low? As far as we are concerned, we think that students have attempted this particular question without even knowing what is fiscal drag. People do not know what is fiscal drag, and yet they attempted this particular question. Now you must understand, if you don't know it, you don't know it. Don't even attempt it. Because if you look at the options 1, 2, 3, 4, and can you see how we have framed the options? All the 4 options look almost similar. You'll be getting confused. And if you think you'll take guess, probability of you getting right is just 25%. So if you don't know it, you don't know it. Just do not attempt it. Getting this point? And if some of you knows what is fiscal drag, the answer to this is increase in tax collection due to inflation. That is fiscal drag. The detailed explanation is there in the explanation part. You can just go to that, right? Look at this. Consider the following: transfer payment, value of production for self-consumption, income earned through sale and purchase of second-hand goods, and imputed value of rent of self-occupied houses. Accuracy once again is less because people took calculated guesses. As far as this question is concerned, if you know how GDP is actually calculated, which is clearly given in the first chapter of our prelims compass, you could have easily attempted this particular question. So when you look at the GDP calculation, we all know transfer payments are not taken into consideration. Only factor payments are taken into consideration. Value of production for self-consumption is taken into consideration. This is something which I had discussed in this year's budget as well. Income earned through sale and purchase of second-hand goods is not taken into consideration, because don't you think if you take into account second-hand goods, it will lead to double counting, hai na? Imputed value of rent of the self-occupied homes is yes, taken into consideration. So right answer in this case is only 2. Right? Okay. Now look at this question. This is a situation based question that we had asked in the pre-pareekshan test, where we decided to make you RBI governor. You can see that question. The US Fed Bank has adopted Fed tapering policy to control rising inflation in USA. However, such a policy in US has led to adverse effect on the Indian economy. As a RBI governor, which of the following steps would you not take? Not what would you take, what would you not take? The keyword here is the word not. And this is one of the favorite ways in which UPSC asks a question, where a easy question UPSC converts into a difficult question just by adding the word not. है ना? Actually question easy है, but UPSC has converted into difficult question by adding the word not. And can you see the accuracy of the students? Just 1/3 of the students got it right. Why? because probably students might have not focused on the word not. So when you're reading a question, please read the question carefully, underline each and every word. Now we all know the basics. I have covered it multiple times in budget, economic survey and so on. In fact, I have covered in the foundation class also. You can see here, this is what we know about it, Fed tapering and all of those things. So to carefully given basic idea, US में inflation है. If there is inflation in US will follow Fed tapering policy. Because of that Fed tapering, rate of interest in US will increase. Rate of interest in US and yield rate in US, they are directly proportional. So yield rates in US will start increasing. Think if I am a US based investor who has invested in India, that time the yield rate in US is increasing, right? So what will I do in that case? If you see the impact on India, the impact on India is there will be large scale FPI outflow. Because a large scale FPI outflow, can I say it will lead to rupee depreciation. Apart from that, there will be less demand for government securities. Because the demand for government securities has fallen, the prices of bonds will reduce, and as the prices reduce, bond yields and prices are inversely proportional. So the yield rates on Indian government securities will increase. है ना? And if the yield rates increase, what will happen? The borrowing cost of the government will increase, right? So think of it. As a RBI governor, what should you do? Don't you think you should sell dollars to control rupee depreciation, right? Apart from that, you should adopt tools to decrease the bond yields to reduce the borrowing cost. Which tools did RBI use? Anyone? Which tools does the RBI use to control the yield rates? Open market operations, then? Yes, Gayatri, Raman. Which tools? GSAP, good Sakshi. Government Securities Acquisition Program, Operation Twist, good. So don't you think as a RBI governor, you'll take some steps to control the yield rate? What will you not do? You will not reduce the repo rate. Why will you not reduce the repo rate? If you reduce the repo rate, money supply will increase. As the rupee supply increases, the rupee value will further undergo depreciation, right? So that is why, which of the following steps would you not take? You would obviously not reduce the repo rate. I hope this part is clear, everyone. Okay. RBI does not follow the direction of Union government. RBI is an independent and autonomous body. Okay, look at this question. Consider following statements about the incremental cash reserve ratio. I hope everyone knows what is incremental cash reserve ratio. It is not cash reserve ratio, it is incremental cash reserve ratio, and it was in news because RBI had introduced this incremental cash reserve ratio in the aftermath of withdrawal of 2000 rupees notes from the economy. Let me tell you why was this introduced by the RBI. We all know that RBI announced a policy of withdrawal of rupees 2000 notes, where people had an option of number one, going and depositing that money in their bank account, 2000 rupee bank note, or people could exchange the 2000 rupee bank note into smaller denomination note, that is 500 rupee note. You had two options: go and deposit that money in the bank or exchange the notes. what actually happened here? People deposited this 2000 rupees notes more rather than exchanging. So it is being said that almost 86% of 2000 rupee notes were deposited in the bank account and 14% of the bank note were exchanged. Can you get this point? Right? So think here, if there is a bank, it is being said bank is having deposits. Prior to withdrawal of 2000 rupee notes, bank had total 200 lakh crores of deposit. This is actual value. बैंक के पास total deposit 200 lakh crores था before withdrawal. Post withdrawal of 2000 rupee notes, banks got a total deposits of 210 lakh crore. Can you see by what extent the deposit of the bank increased? 10 lakh crore. Incremental deposits, additional deposits with the bank was rupees 10 lakh crore. And why does this additional deposit come? Because people started depositing their money in the bank account. Can you think what could be the adverse effect of sudden increase in deposits of a bank? Suddenly deposits of bank increases, banks will start giving more amount of loans, and if they suddenly start giving more amount of loans, money supply in the economy will increase. And if money supply increases, it affects one of the role of the RBI, which is to control what? Inflation. So RBI has to suck out this money. So what RBI generally has is normal CRR. On top of this normal CRR, RBI introduced incremental CRR, and this incremental CRR was 10%. 10% of what? 10% of not the total deposits, 10% of incremental deposits. Incremental deposit कितना है? 10 lakh crore. 10% of 10 lakh crore, how much is that? 1 lakh crore is what bank was supposed to keep with the RBI. That is how RBI sucked out the money. Incremental cash reserve ratio is a temporary measure employed to drain off excess liquidity created to sudden increase in bank deposits. Yes, it's a temporary measure. It's not a permanent measure. Incremental cash reserve ratio replaces the existing CRR. No, it's not replacing the existing CRR. It is on top of the existing CRR. Unlike the CRR, incremental cash reserve ratio balances attract interest from the RBI. No, RBI does not pay interest on normal CRR also, incremental CRR also. So right answer in this case is what? Only one. So when you look at this topic of incremental cash reserve ratio, if you had known it, attempt it. If you don't know it, probably you should have not attempted this particular question. Taking this forward, this is a trend based question about labor force participation rate, female labor force participation rate. Female labor force participation rate has decreased over the last 5 years. No, it has actually increased. This has been highlighted by this year's economic survey as well. It has got increased up to 27% for females, which is good. Service sector is the largest employer. It is not, service sector is not the largest employer, it is the agriculture sector. So when you see both the two statements are incorrect. So this is a trend based question. Cape Town Convention. Now this is a current affairs based question. It was with reference to the insolvency of Go First Airlines. Someone had read about current affairs, they could have easily attempted it. If you don't know about it, probably you should have skipped that particular part. So when you read Cape Town Convention, you can see the accuracy of the students is very less. Just 1/4 of the students have got it right, which means most of the students have done a guesswork with respect to Cape Town Convention. So here what you should have done is, if you have read about Cape Town Convention, you should have gone for it. If you have not read about Cape Town Convention, I would say do not even attempt it. And if you go to the detailed explanation that we have given to you, the Cape Town Convention is a treaty that guarantees the rights of the lessors to repossess the leased aircrafts in case of payment default. So that is what is Cape Town Convention. Look at this question. Which among the following best describes the concept of merchanting trade as provided in the Foreign Trade Policy 2023? Accuracy rate just around 32%. When you see merchanting trade, it is specifically mentioned in this Foreign Trade Policy. That is why it is important. And if you know the right answer to this topic of merchanting trade is it involves shipment of goods from one foreign country to another foreign country without entering India's domestic tariff area. What is this merchanting trade? Quickly, 1 minute, let's understand merchanting trade. This is Singapore. This is US. And then you have a Indian company. Let's say this Indian company is a merchant company or a wholesale company. So wholesaler company, as you know, it is a company which basically purchases commodities from one and sells the same commodities to someone else. So let's say this is a Indian company which is registered in Mumbai. Okay. Now this particular Indian company may probably buy laptop at $1 in Singapore. It is buying a laptop in Singapore at $1. After buying this laptop in Singapore at $1, this laptop it is selling in US at $1.5. So can you see here, condition number 1, buyer and seller, they are not based in India. That's the condition number 1. Buyer and seller, they are not based in India, but they are their transaction is being facilitated by a Indian merchant company. Condition number 1. Condition number 2, there is no value addition at all. The same laptop, you buy it here and then sell it there. There is no value addition. Number 3, this is very important. Goods do not enter into India's DTA, which is domestic tariff area. I hope you know what is DTA. Like entire India, if you see, I can categorize this India into 2 parts. One is SEZ and the remaining part is DTA, domestic tariff area. So what we are saying is goods should not enter into domestic tariff area, but can they enter into India's SEZ? Yes, they can enter into India's SEZ. So look at the 3 conditions. Buyer and seller not based in India. There is no value addition at all. Goods do not enter into India's DTA, domestic tariff area. Then we can call that particular trade as merchanting trade. Think what's the benefit for the Indian company? For every one laptop, how much money it is earning? 0.5, right? Now this thing is in the Foreign Trade Policy 2023, we have said that this particular laptop can enter, or they can enter into this gift city. We know gift city, right? It's an SEZ. So Foreign Trade Policy 2023 has said that will promote merchanting trade through the gift city. Because it was mentioned in FTP 2023, this topic becomes important, and we had asked this question in the pre-pareekshan test. So carefully, if you look at 1, 2, 3, 4, you might think answer is D, which is shipment of goods from SEZ to DTA. No, we are not providing for shipment of goods from SEZ to DTA. Rather, we are simply providing for shipment of goods from one country to another country without entering into India's domestic tariff area. So right answer is C. Clear hai? I hope it is clear with this. Fine then. So we are done with the discussion of the questions related to Indian economy. Now we'll have Vaibhav sir taking up the next part of the discussion. So we will share. We have shared the explanation. So yeah. So now Vaibhav sir will be taking up the second part. Okay, some of you are asking me the meaning of yield hardening. Yield hardening means increase in yield. It is same. Hardening of yields means increase in yields. I hope that part is clear. Okay, fine.
हेलो, ये है ये इसको इंपोर्ट कर दीजिए नोट में। नोट पहले खोलिए। ओके, ठीक है, गॉट इट। तो पीपीटी भी कर दीजिए। यस, थैंक यू सर।
1 घंटा बोला था मैंने।
आपने सर 30 मिनट्स बोला था। 35 मिनट्स डेस्कटॉप पे है ना? ओके, अरे ये पीपीटी खुल गई। प्री परीक्षण ये है पीडीएफ, पॉलिटी एंड जियो पीडीएफ। यस, हेलो, एम आई ऑडिबल? Zoom people, am I audible? Okay, all right. How was the polity section? Let me know. How did you find the polity section? Do you think it was difficult? Do you think it was up to the mark with the UPSC prelims examination, the previous year question trends? Or do you think it was easier? And you know that if you say easy, I will ask you to unmute yourself. Okay, so if you look at the previous year questions of polity, what you will simply see is that in the prelims section, there are always 2 to 3 questions dealing with the basic understanding of the political theory. So if you go back in time, you will see that the questions dealing with political theory concepts as recent as in 2023, due process of law. 2019 to 22, there are 8 questions dealing with the basics of political theory. What is the best understanding of liberty? Which of the following statements are incorrect about justice? Right? So these are the one type of questions for which we generally recommend to our students, and we teach in foundation as well as revision classes, the basics of political theory. If you are reading on your own, you can just summarize the political theory 11th class NCERT. But then if you look at the previous year questions, you will see that another set of questions test our command and understanding on the original Constitution of India and the text of the Bare Act. Correct? So, Bare Act or the Constitution of India, because as a civil servant, the least you are expected to understand and know is how the state of India is organized. What is the relation between executive and judiciary? Because you are expected to be a part of executive, you do not understand the separation of power, you are likely to flounder why you carry out exercises on a day-to-day basis. And third set of questions in polity in the previous year questions belong to the current affairs, recent bills, recent initiatives taken by government, some schemes and policies which can be categorized. If you look at the pre-Pareekshan, that is the reason we formulated 2 questions specifically from political theory. So for example, a question on codified constitution and a question on rule of law. If you have done both the questions correct, which means you have a very good understanding about the basic concept of political theory. But if you look at the basic understanding of the Bare Act, I mean, you will see that there were 6 to 7 questions testing our understanding of the original Constitution of India text, starting from the very basic question about the preamble. And we were surprised to see that a lot of you have marked this particular question, and in fact it turned out to be a tricky question which we were anticipating to be an easy question, and we will understand why some of you and most of you have found it difficult. Then there was a question testing our understanding of article 14, 15 and 16, which was basically freedom of speech and expression and other certain portions. Then we had framed a question on some portions of DPSP and fundamental duties, which basically dealt with the forest. At which places in the Constitution of India do you find provisions related to forest? Very tricky questions, and in fact a difficult one. Then the questions related to money bill. Money bill, difficult to understand. It was clear in the results also that it indeed turned out to be a difficult question. Then the question on the reservation of the bill. So these were, you can see that in line with the previous year question pattern of UPSC. And obviously, we did not leave out the current affairs, and all the important happenings in the current affairs were indeed tested, even in pre-Pareekshan, right? So if you remember, we had questions related to Women Reservations Bill, 106th Constitution Amendment. We had questions related to Panchayat Development Index. We had questions with respect to Armed Forces Tribunal, correct? We had question on contempt of court. So these were the questions which were basically asked because they were in news for some or the other reason which happened in last 6 months to 1 year. We had question on the new bill that the government had to bring for the appointment of Chief Election Commission Act and other Commissioners Act, which was brought out as a consequence of the judgment given in Anup Barnwal case. Yes, Urmita, the recording will be available after this session. All right, is this point clear to everyone? Okay, so let's now go on and solve some of the questions which are conceptual in nature, and you are not likely to find the direct answer to these questions, and that's why we have taken up for this discussion. The first question that we have taken up for this discussion is consider the following statements. The right to equality is available only within the territory of India. Second statement, the state shall not discriminate against any person in any manner on the grounds of descent. The freedom of speech and expression is available to all the citizens, even outside the territory of India. Direct question from the bare reading of the constitutional text. If you have read Article 14, 15, 16 and 19 n number of times, the chances are that you are going to do this right. Because if you read Article 14, every person shall have equality before the law and equal protection of the law only within the territory of India. So although the Constitution of India provides enforcement of equality to every person, that could be a foreigner also, but that is restricted within the territory of India. That's what makes this particular statement correct. The state shall not discriminate against any person in any manner on the grounds of descent. Now, if you read Article 15 and Article 16, the two particular articles of the Constitution of India that deal with non-discrimination, you will find that there is a subtle difference between Article 15 and Article 16. Although both of them provide for non-discrimination, the kind of non-discrimination that Article 15 provides is extended to almost all the activities of the state, whereas Article 16, the non-discrimination, the obligation on the state not to distinguish or discriminate among the people, is only restricted in the matters of public employment. So you can see that while Article 14 is a genre, Article 15 and 16 are like its species. In fact, if you go mathematically, Article 16 is like a subset of Article 15 in that sense. Article 16 specifically caters to public employment. Now there is another subtle difference between Article 15 and 16, and that difference extends to on what basis people cannot be discriminated, not just people, citizens cannot be discriminated. So if you look at Article 15, because some of you are attending it online, I would recommend you to open the original Constitution of India Bare Act, and if you see, you will find no citizen shall be discriminated on the basis of religion, race, caste, sex, and place of birth. So while determining the policies, the state cannot distinguish people on whether a person is Hindu or a Muslim, whether a person comes from a race A or race B, whether a person is from caste A or caste B, or where a person is born. But the lack of discrimination is even deeper. The grounds on which you cannot discriminate is wider when it comes to public employment, because remember, when India got independence, the only way and the sure short way in which the public resources could have been redistributed was the avenues in the public employment. And that's why, apart from these dimensions on which discrimination cannot be made, there were certain additional bases on which discrimination cannot be made, and that is place of residence was added along with descent. So these two extra grounds became the additional points in Article 16. So when you look at the second statement, the state shall not discriminate against any person in any manner on the grounds of descent, turns out to be incorrect, because barring Article 16, Article 15 provides for discrimination on the basis of descent, provides for discrimination on the basis of place of residence, and you can see its application on a day-to-day basis. When people from outside the Delhi complain that there is so much of reservation for the locals in Delhi University, that is a manifestation of Article 15, because education gets covered under Article 15. That is not the case with Article 16. Is this making sense? All right. And obviously, if you read Article 19, subclause 1A, freedom of speech and expression, and there is no mention of any limitation imposed as a result of territorial confinement, right? So just like the territory is confined in Article 14, so just the bare reading of Article 14 makes it very explicit that equality shall not be available outside the territory of India. Article 19 says every citizen shall have freedom of speech and expression. Now there is no mention of word territory. And so obviously this was one of the points in which, when the Maneka Gandhi's passport was impounded, she challenged it on the basis of violation of Article 19(1)(a). When justice asked her, how are you claiming it to be a violation of freedom of speech and expression, she said, sir, when I was given the freedom of speech and expression by the Constitution of India, there was no mention that the state is going to regulate it within the territory of India. And what if I want to exercise my freedom of speech and expression outside the territory of India? State cannot take it away. And that's what became, for the first time, explicitly clear in the Maneka Gandhi versus Union of India, that freedom of speech and expression, state cannot take it away except for reasonable restrictions. And Article 19(1)(a), through the Supreme Court judgment, became clear that shall be available outside the territory of India also. Is this point clear to everyone? Okay, let's now move on to the next question. Yes, so this is a question on the basics of political theory. Which of the following statements regarding codified constitution is incorrect? What is a codified constitution? A constitution, supreme law of the land, which has been written down at one place. So unlike the constitution of various countries like Britain, where it is like a haphazard arrangement of a lot of statutes designated by the parliament that these shall become the supreme law of the land, some countries like India, United States preferred to write down a particular text and designate it as the constitution. So all those constitution where a particular constituent assembly passes a resolution to adapt a text as a supreme law of the land becomes a codified constitution. Now, because Indian constitution is also a codified constitution, it becomes important for us to understand certain things about codified constitution. Correct? If you look at the codified constitution, there are certain good things about codified constitution, there are certain bad things also about codified constitution. Generally, the countries which will have codified constitution, what they will do is that they will have a better understanding of separation of power. Not always, but generally. The power will be better fragmented both vertically as well as horizontally. So if you look at the Indian constitution, the way power has been fragmented vertically is that there is a decentralization of power, sharing of power between the center and the states. At the same time, horizontally, at both the levels, power is fragmented between mainly the legislative, executive on one side and judiciary, independent judiciary on the other side. And because the power is so fragmented, there is no one state authority which has monopoly over power, liberty is generally better protected. Also, codified constitution generally have something like Bill of Rights. So for example, in India we have fundamental rights. In US you have Bill of Rights. So because of the fragmentation of power and because of vertical and horizontal fragmentation of power and Bill of Rights, liberty is generally better protected. In every codified constitution, you have an independent judiciary which has been given the power to review the functioning of other two organs of the state. And so the existence of independent judiciary is also one of the reasons which ensures a better enforcement of liberty generally of the people and specifically of the citizens of that particular state. So from this discussion, it would look like that a codified constitution is like a panacea. You write down a basic text, you make it a supreme law of the land, you fragment the power, you provide for a Bill of Right, and then you are good to go. You are going to ensure a peaceful, prospering society forever. But it's not like that. You are thinking like that because you are the people who are the beneficiary of one of the world's most beautiful constitution. Because more often than not, writing down a constitution leads to the breakdown of peace and prosperity in a particular country. Look at what has happened in Myanmar. Look at what is happening in Nepal. Even before you had a basic constitutional text, people were happy. But as soon as you write down a constitution, obviously you are going to prefer some political values over another. And all the peoples who were supporting the other kinds of values which were removed from the final constitution, they are going to protest. That's what is happening in Nepal. Since the time they have adopted a new constitution, a lot of the people, especially Madhesis, are not at peace. And so, writing down constitution, because it prioritizes certain set of values over another, it leads to the disgruntlement in society and creates violence, a lack of peace in a society. Apart from that, when you create an independent judiciary, what you do is that by providing them power to review the steps taken by executive and the legislature, you are elevating the position of unaccountable, unelected people over the people who have generally the will of the people temporarily. Not the normal will, but the temporary will of the people is with the parliament, is with the prime minister. But by giving the power to non-elected judges, you elevate them above and beyond the representatives of the people, and you understand that the basic value democracy is compromised because the people who can never be removed, people who are unaccountable, people who are non-responsible get the power over the representatives of the people. Correct? So these are the general, we can go on and extend this, but this discussion will help you solve the question. A codified constitution is more rigid and may therefore be less responsive and adaptable an uncodified one. Obviously, this is true. Look at what has happened in India, GST. It took us 17 years to finalize the GST because GST required us not only a passage of a constitutional amendment bill from the parliament, but also its approval by more than half of the states. And it took 17 years for India to build that consensus. Look at what has happened in the 106th constitutional amendment bill. The bill to provide reservation to women has been in talking terms for more than 20 years now. For the first time, it was introduced 20 years, not introduced on the bill, on the table of the parliament, but generally it was in conversation. It took us 22 years to form and build that kind of consensus to passage a bill. So because the codified constitution generally provide a rigid amendment process which vary from one jurisdiction to another, they are generally less responsive and less adaptable. When a codified constitutional supremacy resides with the non-elected judges rather than with the publicly accountable politicians. This is also correct, that is also correct. Non-political judges are able to police the constitution to ensure that its provisions are upheld by the public bodies. That is correct. Individual liberty is absolutely protected is the incorrect statement. Liberty can never be absolutely protected, and neither do we want liberty to be absolutely protected. In fact, if you look at any jurisdiction, all kinds of liberties come with very, very reasonable restrictions. So none of the jurisdictions that you will find provide liberty or even freedom without any kind of restriction or a check on it. And so neither do you want liberty to be absolutely protected, nor it is supposed to be protected in a codified constitution. And that is why this is an incorrect statement but the right answer, because the question was, which of the following statements regarding codified constitution is incorrect? Is this making sense to everyone? Is it clear? All right. Let's now move on to the next discussion, which is with reference to the preamble of the Indian Constitution. Consider the following statements. The preamble does not grant substantive rights. What do you mean by substantive rights? What does it mean by substantive rights? Substantive rights are rights which are not just in namesake. By writing down those rights, we are enabled the rights to us. So for example, there are certain rights which are given in part 3. They are called fundamental rights. At the same time, certain other socio-economic rights were put down in part 4 also. Whereas part 3 is substantive, part 4 is more like a normative. It is written down in the text, but unless and until there is some important Supreme Court judgment, unless and until there is some act passed by the parliament, unless and until there is some new government scheme policy by the government or the state governments, we are not automatically enabled those rights. Unlike the part 3, which are very, very powerful and enforceable. In the same way, the preamble does not grant substantive rights to us. But that does not mean that the values enshrined in the preamble are not available to us. Although they are not available directly, but then they are available indirectly. And that's where the role of the preamble comes to be very important. So for example, if you read Indira Sahni judgment, correct? Direct reference has been made multiple times to the values enshrined in the preamble like equality. If you read S.R. Bommai judgment, the basis of the judgment or the protector of secularism and federalism draws very heavily on preamble. So by connecting preamble to different parts of the Constitution of India, Supreme Court, by constructing the two sections harmoniously, although not directly, has enabled a lot of the values in the preamble, and indirectly they have become important, but the preamble does not grant substantive rights is a correct statement. The preamble came into force on November 26, 1949, and the Constitution 42nd Amendment Act introduced the word socialist, secular between the words liberty and equality. Now this question has been formulated exactly to curb the tendency of the students to photographically match a particular statement where they have revised Lakshmikant 10 times. Because if you have done this question wrong, the chances are that you read this statement only until here, and in the jitteriness of that moment, you just, ye to sahi hoga because I have read this multiple times, 42nd Constitutional Amendment introduced the word socialism, without even reading between the words liberty and equality. So while this statement framed until this point would have been absolutely correct. The inclusion of word between the words liberty and equality by the team has made this statement incorrect, and that's why we have taken this question that even if you understand that partial statement is correct, you should not be hesitant of reading. In fact, you should invest in reading the complete sentence. Similarly, look at what has happened in the second statement. When you read Lakshmikant, the Lakshmikant tells you there are 4 things you can derive from the preamble. The first thing is date of adoption. Second thing is the source of the power of the preamble, which is we the people. So it basically shows you the general will lies with the we the people. And then it tells you the state, character of the state of India, which is sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic republic. And it also tells you that what are the rights which shall be available, or what is the duty of the state of India. However, the question was a little bit tweaked. The preamble came into force on November 26. Now, if you are someone who invested or focused this much without thinking twice, you might have realized that this statement asks very specifically what is the date on which the Constitution of India came into force. Because the day on which Constitution of India came into force all other parts of the Constitution of India also. Correct? And so, the only point of confusion would have been the last line of the preamble, which says, we do hereby adopt, enact, and give to ourselves this Constitution of India. This adoption clause is not the clause of enforcement, because there is an commencement clause under Article 394 to the Constitution of India, which is like a key that goes into the lock, and Article 394 opens the door of the Constitution of India for the people of India. So Article 394 says that except the provisions of citizenship, which came into enforcement before 26th of January 1950, all the other parts of the Constitution of India shall be effective henceforth 26th of January 1950. And so, because preamble obviously is a part of the Constitution of India, it also came into existence on 26th of January 1950. Is this point making sense to everyone? Is this clear to everyone? Yeah? Okay. All right. Let's now move on to the next question. Consider the following provisions of the Indian Constitution. Now, this is a question which has created problems for a lot of you, because obviously you knew that under Article 48A, the directive principles of the state policy provides for the forest related provisions. Under Article 51A, subsection G, the Constitution of India makes our duty to protect the natural forests. That's correct. Obviously, a lot of you could have thought that 7th schedule must contain forests because it is an important matter of governance and needs to be distributed properly between the state and center, or maybe shared. And so it turned out that it is a part of list 3 of the Indian Constitution under entry number 17A. So it is, forest became a matter which are under concurrent list, and so the laws can be made by both the state as well as the central government, parliament as well as the state legislatures. The only confusing point came out to be 9th schedule. Sir, क्या अब हमें 9th schedule के laws भी याद करने पड़ेंगे? And obviously you are not supposed to remember more than 150 laws which have been given immunity from the judicial review. If you understand the whole purpose of 9th schedule was created through Article 31B to provide immunity to various kinds of initiatives that were being taken by the various state governments as well as the central governments. Right? When we created our sovereign independent India, we did not directly provide for socialist India, but we did all the leaders of independence movement and the people who commanded majority in the Congress party were heavily left leaning. And so the word socialism might not have been mentioned in the constitution. For all practical purposes, India was a heavily left leaning state. And one of the one of the manifestation of India's left-leaning tendencies was to take away the land from people who the state thinks have surplus land, and let's try to redistribute them to the people who we think are landless laborers, especially the people belonging to scheduled castes and scheduled tribes. And obviously, when you go to snatch lands from people who have extra and distribute it to the people who don't have the land, there are equal probability that you are going to violate Article 14, because obviously the taking away of the land would not be equal from everyone, the ceiling would not be equal in every state, and so when every person gets equality, Article 14 is bound to be violated. At the same time, in the free and independent India, there was an article which was 19(1)(f) which provided for right to property. So in that step, right to property would often be violated, and so realizing the practical concerns, first constitutional amendment was brought to provide for that any particular legislation by state or center, any particular legislation by the legislative assembly and the parliament, if it tries to bring redistribution of resources, especially in land, that should not be held violative of Article 14 and Article 19. And so, when you talk about land distribution in the society, you should remember that not every kind of land which is private is used for agriculture. There are a lot of orchards, there are a lot of forests which lie under private concern, and that has to be taken away from those people also to be redistributed. So, how can the 9th schedule not contain the provisions related to forests? Because although on one hand, there are forests, obviously majority of them which are the state property, there are still a lot of people who have huge chunks of land in private custody which are forests for practical purposes. And so a lot of the laws in 9th schedule contain, like Gujarat, Sealing of Private Forest Act, and most of the states created laws to take away the land which were by that time under private forestry. And so obviously the right answer is all four. But I think that if you would have applied one more minute to think through it, assuming that 9th schedule mainly dealt with land, and land would have all manifestation from banjar to agriculture to forest land, the answer would have been very, the corollary would have been very simple to draw from here. Do you agree? Garima, you don't agree? Okay. All right. So this is the manifestation of a question which has been motivated from current affairs. If you have been attending the QIP current affairs classes, we have dedicated one class for the discussion of the 3 bills, now the acts, which were brought to revamp the criminal administration in our country. So one of them is Bharatiya Nyaya Sanghita, Bharatiya Suraksha Sanghita, and Bharatiya Sakshi Sanghita. So this question basically talks about the bill which is which has replaced Indian Penal Code, which is called Bharatiya Nyaya Sanghita. The word sedition has explicitly been defined as a crime against the state in the act. In fact, this is wrong to the level that the word sedition has been completely omitted. Obviously because of the concerns shown by the Supreme Court, because right now sedition is under eclipse of Article 13. And so even if the state would have included sedition, most likely it would have been struck down. And so rather than sedition, you have an indirect reference to sedition, not explicit defining of the word sedition. Correct? Organized crime has been explicitly defined as a gang indulging in continuing unlawful activities. This is the correct statement. This is the change from the IPC, where the organized crime were a matter of special acts created to take care of the organized crime activity. So various states had come up with their own gangster acts. There was Makoka and various other laws, special laws, but no reference to organized crime was there in the earlier Indian Penal Code. But rightly, organized crime has been included. Hate speech has been explicitly defined as a crime under the act. Obviously this is incorrect. And this is obviously a matter of debate as to why, despite so many cases of hate speeches happening in India, why the now revamped criminal jurisprudence has left a very important area of jurisprudence, which is hate speech, outside the purview of the criminal jurisprudence. And terrorist act has been explicitly defined as a crime under act. This is absolutely correct. So for the first time, the main law has the terrorist act and defining the terrorist act. Until so far, we had to rely on other paraphernalias like UAPA and NIA and certain other special laws to try to put the terrorist activities to justice. All right. So this will form only two are correct. Let's now move on to the next question, which is consider the following statements about the office of governor. The governor is not bound by the constitution to reserve any bill on any subject for the reservation of the presidential assent. Correct? So when a particular bill is passed by the legislative assembly, it goes to the governor, and governor has multiple options, right? So governor, one of the option is that he may give assent. Another option is he may withdraw the assent. Another option is he may send the particular bill back to the legislative assembly for reconsideration. In that scenario, if legislative assembly resends the bill back to the governor, it creates an obligation on the governor to give the assent. And another option, which is a very powerful one, which is what distorted India's federal structure, created multiple bottlenecks, is a provision which is called reservation for presidential reference. So governor, acting as a long arm of the center, acting as an agent of center in the state, might say, I am not happy with the provisions of this particular bill. Let me just take a view from the president on this particular matter. But the first statement says that there is no circumstances in the Constitution of India under which exercise of reservation of a bill has to be mandatorily done, and obviously this is incorrect, because there are specifically two situations in which it becomes an obligation on the governor to reserve the bill. For example, if a particular bill tries to derogate the powers of the High Court, then obviously governor has to reserve the bill. Governor cannot approve the bill at that level. At the same time, if there is a bill which tries to create or tries to bottleneck interstate trade, then also it is an obligation on the governor to reserve. So though obviously this statement is correct because it says the otherwise. All bills reserved for the presidential assent can be asked by the president to be presented to the state legislature for reconsideration. Now this is incorrect, because if it is a money bill, it cannot be sent back, and obviously that statement becomes incorrect. When a reserve bill which has been asked by the president for reconsideration by the state legislature is passed again, the bill is presented to the governor for his reconsideration. Now this is a catch. Once a particular bill is reserved for presidential consideration, let's say it goes down to the legislative assembly, and next time comes back to the level of governor. Governor has to again send that bill back to the president. So once you have sent it back to the big daddy, it has to be sent back to the big daddy again, and that's why the governor is the agent of the center. And so obviously this is incorrect. This is incorrect, which has been asked by the president for reconsideration is passed again, the bill is presented to the governor. This is also incorrect, leading us to the right answer D, none. So you can see the basic focus on basic understanding. Consider the following statements. So this is a question which tests your understanding of only and only one article of the Constitution, which is article number 110. Let me just Article 110, which talks about money bill and provisions related to money bill. We have discussed this in QIP classes. Wait a second, let me just, there is some issue with the ink. Wait a second. Okay, anyways, we can solve this. Article 110, Lok Sabha Speaker's decision on whether a bill is a money bill or not is final and not subject to judicial review. Wait a second, we have the administration to help us. There is some issue with the, we'll just be back in 10 seconds. चलने दीजिए, कोई दिक्कत नहीं. Note. म्यूट कर दिया, ठीक है, बढ़िया जा रहा है डिस्कशन, ठीक है ना? न्यू नहीं है, इम्पोर्ट इम्पोर्ट। ये वाला चलिए, चले सही है, नहीं आ रहा, पीपीटी पे खोल दीजिए आप। हम्म, हाँ हो गया सही, वो प्रॉब्लम उसी की थी, सही हो गया, इसको हटा दीजिए, वो खराब हो गया। ऑल राइट, सॉरी, द पेन विच आई वॉज यूजिंग became dysfunctional. All right. So this particular question tested our understanding of Article 110, which is the main provision of the Constitution, which deals with the matters related to money bill. And you understand how different money bill and the legislative exercise around money bill is, correct? So unlike ordinary bill, there are a lot of distinctions which can be drawn with respect to the money bill versus the ordinary bill. Lok Sabha Speaker's decision on whether a bill is a money bill or not is final and not subject to judicial review is obviously an incorrect statement, and that requires us not just the bare reading of the Constitution but also the understanding of the Supreme Court judgment, especially the judgment in Aadhaar case. But let's say if I had rephrased this particular statement as the heading would have been according to the Constitution of India, and the first statement would be Lok Sabha Speaker's decision on whether a bill is final, not subject to judicial review, then your answer would have changed. Because according to the Constitution of India, Lok Sabha Speaker's decision is still final. But you know that the exercise of polity and exercise of law is just not on the basis of Constitution. In fact, Constitution is just one component of the law's application. Correct? You have conventions, you have laws, and then you have Supreme Court judgments all together decide the exercise of law in reality on ground. And so because of the combination of the Supreme Court judgment along with Article 110 is that this statement becomes incorrect, because in Aadhaar Act, Supreme Court clearly said that the Lok Sabha's designation of a money bill can be inquired into by the Supreme Court. A money bill can only be introduced after the recommendation of the President. Obviously, I think most of you would have gotten this right. The President's recommendation is required for moving any amendment for making reduction or abolition of any tax. This is obviously incorrect, because while tabling a particular bill as a money bill, you required first support from President, approval from President. Doing or reduction, making any reduction or abolition or even minor changes into money bill does not requires a re-recommendation from the President, and so that's why this particular statement is incorrect. A bill which mandates expenditure from the Consolidated Fund of India should be passed by either house only after the recommendation of the President for the consideration of the bill to both the houses. Just go and read the complete Article 110. You will see subclause 3, which is exactly the line that has been taken away. So even if a particular bill is not a money bill, which does not completely fits into the designation of Article 110 subclause 1, where you have 7 conditions, where a particular bill contains only any or either of only those conditions is fit to be a money bill. Apart from that, even if there is a particular another bill which has a provision of drawing out of a money from let's say the Consolidated Fund of India, that also needs a recommendation from the President of India. All right, so incorrect, correct, incorrect, correct. Last, consider the following statements about the contempt of the court. The Constitution of India defines the contempt of the court. If you have read the Bare Act, you clearly understand that this is an incorrect statement. Contempt of court is mentioned, not defined. So if you read the reasonable restrictions on freedom of speech and expression in India, you will find contempt of the court. But it is not defined. It is defined in the Contempt of the Court Act 1971, which defines the contempt in 2 forms. One of the forms is civil contempt, where there is a sheer ignorance or definement of the order given by the courts in India. That is treated as a civilian offense. That is treated as an offense which is not an offense against the state. But if you are deliberately exercising your freedom of speech and expression in a manner which denigrates the position of the judiciary, which taints the image of the judiciary, that is treated as an offense which is higher than the ignorance of the order of the Supreme Court, because Supreme Court can take care of all the matters. If you're not following their order, they have all the tools available to make you follow their order. Similar is the case with High Court. But if you overall reduce the image of the Supreme Court, that is taken as a serious offense, and that's why it is designated as a criminal offense. And so the Constitution of India does not defines criminal contempt of a court is the willful disobedience. No, this is a civil contempt. All courts and tribunals have been conferred the power to punish for their contempt. This is also incorrect, because that is the problem that we see in a lot of grievance redressal bodies and a lot of statutory bodies, that although they are expected to act like a tribunal, they are acted to act like grievance redressal bodies, but they do not have the power to punish for their contempts, and that's why this is also an incorrect statement. All right, this is the last question that we are going to take up. Consider the following statements about Election Commission of India. Any person of integrity having experience in public life can be appointed as an election commissioner or the chief election commissioner. So if you have read the recently passed act by the parliament, which is Chief Election Commissioner and Other Election Commissioners Appointment Act 2023, you must have read that there is another condition also associated with the person of integrity. Only if that person satisfies these two conditions, A plus B, and the A is, this is A, this is B. What is the A? If you have read it, please let me know in the chat box. What is the first condition that you should have? The person should have served the government in the capacity of anyone? No one has read the managing elections. Okay, so there is one other condition. Search it on the internet and let me know in the chat box. This is your duty, so that you will remember. It's a very important topic for this year prelims. The selection committee for the appointment of the chief election commissioner and other election commissioners consists of Prime Minister, correct? Chief Justice of India. Now this was the whole point of coming out with this particular legislation, because Supreme Court had ordered the creation of collegium which must consist of Prime Minister, Chief Justice and the leader of opposition. The government obviously wanted their people of their own liking to become the election commissioners and Chief Election Commission. They removed the Chief Justice of India. The salaries, allowances and other conditions of service of the CEC and other EC shall be the same as that of a judge of a Supreme Court. If you read the bare act, this is the correct statement. There are chances that when we framed the question, it was already a bill, and later on when it was passed as an act, this provision got changed, but right now this stands as a correct statement. The procedure for the removal of the CEC and other ECs is similar. Obviously this is one of the problems with the particular bill, because if you have obviously we have discussed the problems with the election commission as an institution. An institution which is responsible for conducting free and fair elections in India and preserving the substantive democracy in our country faces a problem where out of 3 people, 1 person gets the immunity and other 2 people of the commission are contingent for their service on the wishes of the CEC. A lot of people were expecting that when we will have a new legislation, this provision will be removed, but the government has retained the provision, perpetuating the same kind of problem which plagued the election commission as a office altogether, because as long as the government can control CEC, through CEC it can always control the other 2 members, because the constitutional immunity is available only to CEC. All right. So I guess that we have discussed most of the conceptual questions. We have left out questions on Women Reservation Bill, Ethics Committee. We have left a question on Armed Forces Tribunal because there is no conceptual part to it. And obviously by reading the solutions, you can explanation, you can obviously understand. So there is no need for a teacher for you to make all those points understand. All right. So obviously, keeping in tradition of Raus IAS, we all are available in the hall. A lot of you meet us there very frequently. And so if there are more questions which you find are the explanation are not making any sense to you, you are not able to understand how to solve those questions, you can come on the first floor of our Karol Bagh center, and you can also go to the Bangalore center if you are in Bangalore, to understand the rest of the questions that we are not taking up for the sake of the length of the class. All right, so now I will hand over the cudgels to Gaurav sir, who is going to take up geography and environment questions. Gaurav sir.
Hi, am I audible to all of you? Am I audible? Just let me know. Okay, thank you everyone. So now we will be moving towards geography and environment section, and I know that a lot of questions have been discussed from economy and polity part, and the discussions were also intense, right? So just gather an energy for geography and environment part. And we also know that geography and environment, when it comes to the prelims examination, so this section is also very important, and in the recent times this section has become more important, especially the environment and ecology biodiversity part, because the questions, a lot of questions which is been asked by UPSC in prelims, and students have felt a lot of issues in those questions, right? So yes, I understand that ecology and biodiversity is a challenge, but yes, so our job is to deal with this challenge, and then only we can be selected. So in this very sense, we shall be moving towards some of the key questions. The first question, that is question number 47, was asked in relation to the Forest Conservation Amendment Act 2023. Right? So this was one of the most important environmental legislations which was passed by the parliament, which was amended, and that is why this topic becomes very important, not only for the prelims but this year's mains also, and hence we should understand all the important amendments which have been made under this particular amendment act. But as far as this question is concerned, there are two statements written. The statement one says that the amendment act covers only the land that was declared or notified as a forest under the Indian Forest Act 1927. So for this to understand, just a basic overview that what is basically the objective of Forest Conservation Amendment Act, or Forest Conservation Act for that matter. The thing is, now because we have to balance the economy as well as the environmental aspects in our growth, so that is why we understand that, let's say if you have to build any particular infrastructure, or let's say if you have to convert the forest land for non-forest use purposes, right? So government cannot allow you to do it completely freely, that you can go and then you can cut down the trees and convert the forest for non-forest use purposes. So there has to be certain regulations. The common sense also says this. So how this whole system will be governed is dealt by the Forest Conservation Act. Right? So in 2023, there was an amendment. The first statement says that this amendment act covers only the land which was declared or notified as a forest under the Indian Forest Act 1927. So if you have read the amendments, and those who have attended the QIP or the current affair classes, they must be knowing, we have discussed this point a lot of times, that, and this is also one of the biggest criticisms. So the government has said that this amendment act will be applicable only to those areas, one, which have been which are the notified forest under the Indian Forest Act 1927, or the government said that this act will also be applicable on the recorded forest under the Forest Conservation Act 1980, right? And then 1980 onwards. So basically on this particular date, in this particular year, the Forest Conservation Act was passed. Are you getting it? When this act was passed, so obviously certain forests were recorded under this act, and eventually other forests were also recorded. Let's say there was a forest which got recorded under this particular act in 1990. So the government says that all those forests which either are the notified forest under Indian Forest Act 1927 or are recorded forest on or after this 1980 Act will be covered by this particular Amendment Act. So now the question or the criticism which was raised by the experts was that what about those forests between this 1927 to 1980, because the Amendment Act is saying that they are going to cover the forests on or after 1980. What about the forest between 1980 and 1927? Second important criticism in this very regard is that in 1996, there was a Supreme Court judgment which said that when it comes to conversion of a forest for a non-forest use purposes, so there the government should not restrict itself to only the legal definition of forest, and hence government should frame broader policies. They should take the dictionary meaning of forest. So the Supreme Court said that if there is any particular area where there are some number of trees having some canopy, so to convert that area also, despite the fact that it is not recorded or notified, right? Supreme Court said that even that area, if it has to be converted for the non-forest use purposes, then also there should be certain regulations under this particular act. So that means this amendment is also not taking the spirit of the Supreme Court judgment. Are you getting it? Coming back to the question, it says that this Amendment Act covers only these particular forests. So no, this amendment also takes the recorded forest, and hence statement 1 is incorrect, right? Coming to the statement 2, it exempts strategic national security projects on the land situated within 200 kilometers. Now I guess that most of you would be knowing this particular fact. What is the limit? What is the exemption limit from the international borders? That is basically not 200, it is 100 kilometer. And this was also one of the criticisms. Now this amendment basically aims to do what? It basically aims to exempt these particular areas. For example, let's say if tomorrow army has to construct a certain infrastructure for the national security purpose. So obviously the government feels that the infrastructure must not face any particular delay because of such legal complexities, and hence they exempted it. But then the issue is, because it is taking every international border of India in a similar fashion. So if we have to talk, let's say, about the northeastern border of India, now we know that this particular border and this part with China, Myanmar respectively, this region is one of the most ecologically sensitive and biodiverse areas. And hence experts also said that even this amendment also goes against the spirit of protecting the forests. Right? So this statement is also incorrect, and hence question is that which of the statements given above are correct. So both the statements are incorrect. Right? Now moving to the next question. The question is in the Green Credit Rules 2023. Again, one of the very important topics for this year prelims. Okay. So you must have read about these green credit rules. What is green credit? You must earlier have read about carbon credit, right? So carbon credit basically is, for example, if there are two entities, let's say, and one entity is emitting a lot of carbon dioxide or related gases, other entity is working for the absorption. So there can be a trade of these carbon units, right? But this carbon credit is restricted only to the carbon dioxide or the greenhouse gases, that is, which are calculated as per the carbon dioxide equivalent. For example, methane can be there, right? This green credit basically aims to incentivize those activities which are greener in nature. For example, let's say tomorrow I am converting my agriculture practices and I am moving towards, let's say, organic farming. Right? So this moving towards organic farming might not come under the carbon credit or carbon trading, but this can come under what? Green credit rules, because it is an all-encompassing view. It is taking the broader aspects of greenery, not only restricted to the reduction of the carbon dioxide or the related greenhouse gases. Right? So in this context, let us see the statements. It is an initiative within the government's lifestyle for the environment, that is LIFE initiative. Now this was also a very important initiative. Basically, the government says if you have to combat climate change, yes, on the part of the government they are taking bigger initiatives, but we should also transform our living standards, our living styles. So for example, let's say if you are brushing your teeth, you need to conserve water and just switch off the tap. Right? These are certain small lifestyle changes. Are you getting it? So try to use bicycle when you are moving out of your house for a smaller distance. So these are certain lifestyle changes, and under this lifestyle for the environment, or that is the life movement, this green credit rule initiative was also started, and this was launched on the sidelines of COP28, right? Second, it has been notified under the Environment Protection Act 1986. This statement is also factually correct. Statement 3 says, under it, voluntary tree plantation is envisaged on the degraded land, wasteland, watershed area, etc., under the control and management of the forest departments. Again, as we have discussed, that if someone has to earn the green credits, they can go for the voluntary activities, for example, growing the trees on such lands. So if you are, let's say, tomorrow growing the trees on such land, you also can earn the green credits, right? Next is the generation of the green credit under the Green Credit Rules 2023 is independent of the carbon credit. Now this has to be understood, because we have discussed carbon credit is tackling a different aspect, which is basically the carbon dioxide and equivalent gases. Green credit is tackling a broader aspect, right? So that is why it is independent of it. It is not like that the government has come up with the green credit rules and now it is not dealing into anything with the carbon credit aspects. No, carbon credit will also go and green credit will also go simultaneously. Both the things will take place, right? So in this question, this statement is also correct, and hence D, all the four statements are correct. So question because is asking that how many of the above statements are correct, hence all the statements are correct, right? Okay, now moving to the next question. Again, a very important theme, High Seas Treaty. Now, what is the background of this treaty? Again, in a very commonsensical manner, we all know about UN clause, right? So UN clause basically tells you what? It tells you different types of rights for different countries in different areas. For example, we have territorial area, then we have exclusive economic zone, etc. What about those areas which are designated as the open seas or the high seas, right? So it should not be like that, because that particular area is not coming under the national jurisdiction of any particular country. So it should not be the case that tomorrow, let's say I have the capital and I move into the high seas and I start extracting the petrol or the crude oil from there and threatening the biodiversity of that particular region. That is why international community believed that there should be certain rules for those areas which are beyond the national jurisdictions. Are you getting it? And hence this High Seas Treaty, which is also known as BBNJ, Biodiversity Beyond the National Jurisdictions, this treaty was signed, right, in order to conserve the biodiversity of that areas which are beyond the national jurisdictions. In this context, let us see these three statements. One says the treaty aims at strengthening the resilience and certain provisions based on the polluters pay principle. Yes, this statement is correct, right? Because basically it is enforcing this particular principle, that is polluters pay. For example, let's say if tomorrow there is an entity and it is moving into the high seas for some economic explorations. Now because of those explorations, there is bound to be a marine pollution. So how to deal with it? So there will be certain regulations on those entities. Though that particular entity have to go for the environmental impact assessment, right? So the things, for example, which presently we are doing within our domestic territories, that is on land, those things must also go to the maritime areas, right? So the one who is polluting must also pay for that. So this is correct. Under the treaty's provisions, the parties must assess the potential environmental impacts of any planned activities beyond their jurisdiction, as we have discussed, right? For example, similarly on the land also there is an environmental impact assessment. So the same principle is also applicable on the high seas. The logic is same, because if you are going to explore the maritime areas and you are polluting, so obviously there has to be environmental impact assessment. Are you getting it? So this statement is also correct. The treaty provisions recognize the rights and traditional knowledge of the indigenous people and the local communities. Yes, this is also correct. And from this, you should also understand that there is a common principle. Read any law, any treaty which is focused towards conserving the biodiversity. You will witness the fact that whenever there is a law For example, Convention of Biological Diversity or the domestic law also, you will witness that whenever you are moving, you are making some provisions to conserve the biodiversity, the role of traditional community is always there. For example, access and benefit sharing. Are you getting it? Because it is a commonly accepted principle that you cannot conserve biodiversity until and unless you cannot protect the interests of the people living in that particular area. So participatory conservation is the norm, right? So this statement here is also correct, and all the three statements are correct for this question. Okay, I guess this was a pretty simple question, so most of you must have marked it correct. If not, then we have discussed, right? Okay, moving to the next question. The question is in the context of star labeling program. So now when you purchase certain electrical appliances, you see 3 stars, 4 stars, 5 stars, right? So what is basically this star labeling program? The objective is what? To tell the consumers on the basis, let's say, of the number of stars, that how much electricity is conserved by using this particular electrical appliance, right? So there are certain appliances under this program which has the mandatory provision. For example, those appliances must have this star labeling as a mandatory thing. Then there are certain appliances which are not mandatory and they are voluntary. So that means that the manufacturer may or may not label that particular electrical appliance as per this program. So both the types of appliances are there, and there is a list also. We are not going into that list, but yes, you on yourself can see that particular list. Okay. Now coming to this particular question, the program assesses the energy efficiency of the appliances on a scale 1 to 5. Yes, we know this. It comes under the Energy Conservation Act of 2001. Yes, this is also factually correct. Statement 3 says, it has been accredited by the Energy Efficiency Services Limited. Again, factual statement, so you have to memorize it. There is no concept in it. This is incorrect, because the body dealing with this particular thing is which one? Bureau of Energy Efficiency, right? So it is BEE. So that is why this third statement is incorrect and statement 1 and 2 are correct, and hence option B, only 2 statements will be the correct answer, right? So in this question, all the other options were also factual. So if you know such type of statements, then you know it, but if you don't know it, then obviously there is no concept. So either you will believe it or you will just hit it, right? Okay. Next. Now this term was there in news, and that is why we have taken up this particular question in the pre-Pareekshan. The term is the Kanath system. Now what do we understand by Kanath system? It is basically some of the ancient and medieval practices, especially in the arid as well as the semi-arid areas of West Asia as well as North Africa. So basically under this system they used to build a structure. So let us try to see that how this system worked. Let's say this is a land, right? Below this land, let's say this is a groundwater table, and below this groundwater table, obviously we understand that there is a presence of groundwater. We have saturated soils. So what they will do is that they will install a pipe-like structure in this groundwater table, right? They will extract the water. Then there will be a horizontal pipeline like this, from which the water will move in this direction. This is just a rough representation of the system. So water will move. And let's say this is the land surface. A point will come when this pipe will come up from the land surface. Through this, there will be the drainage of the water, and then the agricultural fields might be irrigated, right? So this is an ancient system in that particular region, and hence the option will be what? The correct answer will be Kanath system. Basically deals with the water conservation technology, right? Okay. now moving towards the next part. Very simple question. I know that most of you must be knowing the answer for this, but such pattern has become very important, that is assertion and reason type, and you need to understand, despite the fact that you know that statement 1 and statement 2, let's say, are correct or incorrect, the greater challenge is to assess that whether the statement 2 is correct explanation of the statement 1 or not. Many a times it might happen that statement 1 and statement 2 are correct, but statement 2 might not be the correct explanation for statement 1. Are you getting it? So let's see the statement. Statement 1 says that Indonesia, Philippines and Japan are highly vulnerable to the earthquakes, volcanic eruptions and tsunamis. Yes, we know, because let's say if we are moving towards the East Asian coast, and here we have Indonesian region, then here we have Australian region, here we have Japanese region. So this we have the Pacific plate, here you have the Eurasian plate, then here you also have certain minor plates. We know that at the ring of this Pacific Ocean, there is a convergence going on, right? On this particular area, because the geophysical characteristics are such that there is a subduction of this Pacific plate below the major or the minor continental plates. Because of this subduction only, we understand that there are huge number of what? Subduction zones. If in a particular region it is characterized by the presence of huge number of subduction zones and the plate is moving down the subduction angle, then don't you think that there will be accumulation of the stresses, and a time will come when this motion will overcome the stress and the stress will be released, releasing huge amount of energy. That energy is basically the seismic energy, hence the earthquakes, right? Basically this region is tectonically very unstable. So that is why we understand that both the statements are correct, and statement 2 is the correct explanation also of the statement 1, and hence the correct answer will be both the statements are correct. Statement 2 is the correct explanation, that is option A. Simple question, just the basics of physical geography. Rhododendrons. Now, natural vegetation is relatively a neglected topic. So people do understand about the basics of the forests. So yes, there can be questions on general forest types also, montane forest, shola forest, Himalayan forest, etc., mangroves. But then there can be a question on a specific species also, right? The species, at least which are mentioned in NCERTs, we should have certain basic information about those species. Given the fact we know that UPSC is so much entering into the species aspects of the question, so obviously we cannot deal with every species, because then there are lacks of species of only the insects, right? So you are not going to deal with every species, but yes, those flora and fauna which has a mention in NCERTs, we can have certain basic information on that, right? So that is why we framed the question on rhododendrons. Every question basically has a thought process behind it, that why that question has been formed. Okay, so as to help you people that how you have to think, let's say next time when you are reading the NCERT, what extra information can you take out of the NCERT if you are not dealing with such type of questions? क्योंकि natural vegetation तो सभी ने पढ़ लिया होगा बहुत बार. Now coming to this particular question, statement 1 says that they are the herbaceous plants with the colorful flowers. So they are not the herbaceous plants, they are basically the woody. They have woody structure, right? They are not herbaceous, and hence this is incorrect. Statement 2 says, in India, the Western Himalayas accounts for most of the biodiversity of the rhododendrons. So this rhododendrons is basically present in the Darjeeling and the Sikkim Himalayas. So this particular region, India's around 66% of the rhododendrons is present in Darjeeling and Sikkim Himalayas. So if this is true, then obviously Western Himalayas cannot have most of the rhododendrons, right? So this statement hence is also incorrect. 3 says they are found in both evergreen and deciduous vegetation. So this is factually correct. I hope that you must be knowing this also, because this is a direct outcome by just reading the natural vegetation from NCERT, because there we do read about tropical rainforest, deciduous forest, etc. and there we tend to memorize the name of the plants or trees found in those specific forests. I hope so, right? So this is correct, and hence how many statements are correct? So just one statement is correct, and therefore A, only one will be the correct answer, right? Okay. Next question. Which of the following statements are correct regarding, here the word is missing, the question was regarding the katabatic winds. So you must have heard about this particular word, katabatic winds. What are katabatic winds? So they are also known by the name as fall winds. What are fall winds? So let us try to understand this. Basically what happens on the mountain slopes during night, we know that the slopes will be radiating much of its energy outwards, right? If the energy is being radiated outwards, so can we say that the air in this particular area, let's say, will be cooler? If the air is cool, then that air will be what? Denser. So now we understand that at this particular point there is an air parcel which is cool, which is dense. Under the influence of gravity, what will happen? This air will come down, and hence known as fall, because it is falling. So this is known as a falling wind also. These are known as katabatic winds. Once these winds, let's say, have reached to the valley bottoms, what will it do? It will try to displace the warm wind in the upward direction, right? So let's say if I have to make this diagram again, so it will be like this. Let's say this is valley, the wind is moving down, and this is the cold wind, and then we have the warm wind which is moving in the upward direction. So here you have warm wind. In the valley bottoms you have cold wind. That is why you will be finding most of the settlements or the orchards especially in these areas, because here there will be the presence of warm wind which is moving in the upward direction, but in the valley you will be having a cold wind, right? Now read the question. They flow downhill under the influence of gravity. They attract the homes and orchards to be settled in the mountain valleys. No, not in the valleys, but on the mountain slopes. Also, if you have to take this concept forward, you must have heard about snow eater winds. So those are basically the fall winds. They are moving down the slope. As the winds move down the slope, there is compression, adiabatic changes take place. The winds increase their temperature, and hence they lead to melting of the snow also, right? So it is just the continuation of this very concept. Okay. So this is incorrect. This one is correct, and hence one only will be the correct answer. Okay. Now moving to the next topic is western disturbances. Now this is a very static topic, because we know that you people have read geography, and the monsoon is the most important topic when it comes to the Indian geography, and there we have read a lot about western disturbances, right? But still, if there is some of you have marked this question incorrect, let us understand this. Statement 1 says that western disturbance is a monsoonal precipitation. Now this is the key word. First of all, we should understand that what are western disturbances. So let's say this is the African region, this is the Arabian region, and this is India. So here you have the presence of Himalayas. Then this is the Mediterranean Sea, and here you have the North Europe, and there you have the peninsular region. Okay. Now this is the location of what? Mediterranean Sea, right? Now this Mediterranean Sea basically has a front line. In these areas there is a generation of fronts. Because of the generation of these fronts, the winds move upward, and hence these winds are the extratropical cyclones. So first point, they are not the monsoonal precipitation because they are extratropical cyclones. Then under the influence of subtropical westerly jet streams, they move towards the east during winters, right? Then they encounter Himalayas, they move towards the south, right? There is excessive bending of the jet streams, it reaches to the Gangetic plains, and then we know how it impacts the Indian monsoon. But this is happening in which season? Winter. IMD says that which are the 4 months of the Indian monsoon? June, July, August, September. And I hope that these are not the winter months, right? So that is why statement 1 is incorrect on 2 accounts. One, it is not monsoonal, not in the months of monsoon, and because it is extratropical formation. So statement 1 is what? Incorrect. 2, Arctic warming sometimes shifts the subtropical westerly jet streams northwards. Now, if you have to understand that how this works, you need to understand, try to draw an analogy in winters versus summers in India. In which season these subtropical westerly jet streams are more dominant? So just try to think about it. So during winters, these subtropical westerly jet streams are more dominant. That is how during winters they exert their pressure into this Gangetic plains that is up to around 22-degree north latitudes, right? And during summers, what happens? These subtropical jet streams move towards north. Monsoonal winds enter into the India. So this is the whole mechanism, right? If we understand this, that during winters these jet streams are more dominant, now try to understand what is the basic reason. During winters, the thermal contrast, the basic root cause for the formation of jet streams. During winters, the thermal contrast is much greater compared to the thermal contrast in summers. And this was also one of the questions asked in last year 2023 prelims, also in the context of oceans and continents, about the thermal contrasts in different seasons, right? So during winters, the thermal contrast is more, and hence higher dominance of the jet streams. So that means, let's say if thermal contrast is on a lower side, so jet streams will be less dominant and will be therefore towards north, not towards the south, right? Am I making some sense? If the thermal contrast is on a lower side, that means jet streams are less dominant. If jet streams are less dominant, that means they will be just towards the north. They will not enter, let's say, towards south in India. Right? Now draw the analogy. Arctic warming, basically we can link it with the climate change or increasing temperatures of global warming. Right? Global warming basically is doing what? It is increasing the temperature. It is reducing the thermal contrast, and hence the dominance of jet streams is also getting reduced. Therefore, the jet streams move towards north. Also, there is a role of polar jet streams which pulls the subtropical westerly jet stream into it, and polar jet stream, because it's moving towards more north, so hence the jet streams also move towards north. So this is also the correct explanation. But if you do not know the role of polar jet streams, you could have still marked this question in a manner just by drawing the analogies of the Arctic warming and the thermal contrast, right? So that is why this statement is correct. B, 2 only will be the correct answer, right? Now this is the last question which we are taking for today. I know that discussion has been very lengthy, but the point is the fruits which you are expecting will only come after these lengthy discussions and lengthy sessions. And also there are so many questions which we have not taken up, because obviously we understand that those are factual questions. So we advise you that you have to see the explanations and you have to analyze those explanations in much detail so that it can provide you the results which you want. Coming to the last questions, which is in relation to, again from the current affairs, Mines and Minerals Development and Regulation, that is MMDR Act 1957, and there has been an amendment to this particular act. So let us see, there are 4 statements. Statement 1 says, mining and exploration of the minerals listed as atomic minerals in the MMDR Act can be done by the private and government entities. No, they are only reserved for the government entities. Recently, what development has taken place is, in the earlier act, there was a term, there was a list which was known as the atomic minerals, right? Under this atomic minerals, there were certain minerals which were non-atomic in nature. For example, lithium was also there. So that means, let's say if now government needs to explore or extract the lithium, only the government sectors can do it as per the previous act, right? But this can hamper the private investment, and we know that how critical lithium has become for our manufacturing industries in present time. So in order to relax those norms, government took out lithium and certain other associated minerals from the atomic list. So now lithium, which earlier was atomic mineral, now is a non-atomic mineral. So for lithium, private players are allowed because it is now non-atomic. But still, the minerals which are there in atomic list are exclusively reserved for the government players. So that means statement 1 is correct, private is not allowed. The center and the state governments can award the mining lease for minerals listed as critical minerals in this. Again, this is incorrect because state governments are not allowed. It is exclusively a prerogative of the central government to award the mining leases for the critical minerals, right? Critical minerals, for example, molybdenum, tungsten, etc. So this is also incorrect. Statement 3 says minerals such as all the rare earth metals, lithium, potash, and phosphate have been placed in the list of critical minerals. No, all the rare earth metals are not placed in critical minerals, right? So that is why this is also incorrect. Last statement says the central government has launched the auction for lithium mining at Katghora in Chhattisgarh. Now this place is also very important. Okay, so there can be a question linking this particular place to this state Chhattisgarh. So just remember this place. Yes, this is factually correct. Okay, and that is why only one statement is correct, right? So these were the important key questions from geography, environment, from static as well as from the current affairs perspective, which we felt that they are the necessary ones to be discussed, and that was all from our side. Again, just a small piece of advice: you have to go through the detailed explanations which we have already provided to you. Okay, so just go through those explanations, try to understand that where the things went wrong, if there are certain silly mistakes, if there are certain topics which you have not read till now, not revised till now, just go for them, and we wish you all the very best. Thank you.